So, hello everyone to the Tobias Ruck podcast. I might rename that to Ruckcast, like someone suggested that from the BCH community. So I was gonna go, Ruckcast. That sounds kind of cool.
Ruckcast.
Maybe,
that actually works. There is something to it.
Yeah, because like in English, ruck means like to cause trouble, like rock, or like a ruckus or something. And I'm like I don't want to be like a total troublemaker, but if it's my last name, you know what am I supposed to do? I have here with me Amaury Séchet, the infamous, also troublemaker, I guess, and causing forks everywhere, and yeah, creator of BCH and now eCash. Yeah.
Hi, glad to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. I am doing the Electronic Cash Conference, as you might have heard. And yeah, if people want to buy tickets, 2022.be.cash. I think there's, okay, maybe it might expire now, but if you, once this is released, there will be the eCash day, no, eCash 15 promo code, and you can use that. Yeah, I was thinking back to the Bitcoin Cash City conference, and Cyprian Vinamani recently, I mean maybe a few months ago, linked back to your culture. You made a speech on culture, and I think, and basically the bottom line was this is still as true as it was back then, and maybe even more true. Like the
yeah, I think this aged very gracefully. Unfortunately, doesn't look like many people learned anything from it, so we are where we are. But I think, yeah, everything that was said then, I think remains just as true today.
Yeah, because there's a certain culture in BCH and you can really feel it. And then now there's a certain culture in eCash, and it's completely different, right? It's more of the, like I would say, normal kind of crypto view, which is fine. Like I think that's good. But the kind of culture that I would really like to see, and I think it's kind of emerging, is this like, oh, we need this for the future as a like defense kind of against central bank digital currency.
It's the lifeboat, right? It's really is the lifeboat when you look at what's profiling, and I mean it's really coming fast. When you look about it, you look back over the past 3 years, and if things continue at the same pace, it's gonna be really bad very soon. But yeah, we have a banking system that is more and more turning into a panopticon. And like, even to a degree, I'd say the bank are not comfortable with anymore, right? The bank are forced to do much more surveillance than they would like to. And this is accelerating, and at the end of the day, what's at stake is that you won't be able to use money if the government decide that you should not be able to use money, right? And think about the consequences of that, right? It means that you cannot buy food and you cannot pay the rent for your place, so you're good for the streets.
And I recently saw someone called Peter Sweden. I'm not sure if that's his actual last name, because he's from Sweden. It's probably just his location. And he posted that
that's Sven.
Sven. Probably Sweden. And he posted that there's now credit cards that track your carbon footprint, and if you exceed a certain level of CO2, it just denies payments. And the fact that we have that right now is incredibly scary.
Yeah, I mean, that's coming, and the excuse is going to be the ecology, and then it's going to be, oh, we need to fight that pandemic, and then it's going to be, oh, there is like illegal immigration, we need to control it, and then it's going to be, oh, like there is a drug epidemic, we need to get it under control, and then there always going to be a different reason, but the solution is always going to be more of the same.
We need more control, more tracking.
Yeah, we need to track this and that and the other. And there is something like, some people are, I don't know, they have within their mind that there is some kind of like grand conspiracy behind this, and I'd like to say it right, like there probably isn't, right? Like there are bad stuff happening all the time. They don't need to make them up, right? They just need to capitalize on them. It's simple as this, right? Like there is no need for a grand conspiracy. There's not even the need for a concerted effort, right? Because it's the Department of Education and the Department of Health and the Department of whatever in the government. It's like, this is the opportunity for us to get a bit more of this, a bit more of that, right? And it just like grows up and extend to everything, you know? And at the end of the day, we are looking at a state of totalitarianism that just have been like, I've never existed before because there was no technological means to enforce such level of totalitarianism. That doesn't mean there is going to be more violence, or like, if you look in the past, you know, there was stuff like the Gulag or whatever, where, you know, people were murdered and stuff like that. It's probably not going to be the same, right? All of that is going to be different, because why would you have all that logistic to bring people into some places to exterminate them when you could just like cut them off of money, right? And suddenly they barely exist anymore, and you don't need to do anything. That's way easier, right? So in some way, that's also less, you won't have this picture, you know, of all those people starving in the same place, because all those people are going to be scattered all over the place in the street. And so you want to have this strong symbol, but, you know, like deep down, it's kind of the same. And it's coming very, very strong. So for people that don't run business or whatever, maybe they don't realize it, but I can see it, you know, like every time you need to do official stuff, especially when it involves the bank, like every couple of years, there is more paperwork, more justification to provide, stuff like that. Yeah, it's quite crazy.
Yeah, I agree. And you can, you know, like, of course, there's people from the World Economic Forum and people who, like, you know, I've gone there, and what I realized is that the people there, you know, they just have that kind of view that, you know, like, we have to care about the environment. And if enough people just kind of have that religion, you still have this emerging
but we do
behavior.
have to care for the environment, right? in some way, we just have one planet, but it doesn't mean that we need to enslave everybody.
It's almost crazy that, like, it's almost like, for me, probably plastic is one of the biggest problems for the environment right now. It's not plastic straws. Actually, turns out that fishing nets apparently account for like the vast majority of plastic in the oceans. And of course, plastic straws are, like, you know, such a small, especially if they're wrapped. If the paper straw is then wrapped in plastic, then that obviously makes a ton of sense. But yeah, you could really see the people there, like, they really wanted to do good, right? Like they and, you know, obviously there will be bad people who are like just, and I think I met some people who like are legit sociopaths, and they don't really care, and they probably just use this like environmentalism to gain power.
All of that is a constant in history, right? So you have your 5% of sociopaths in pretty much any environment, right? So they are there, they were there before, they are still gonna be there, right? But those 5%, they cannot do anything without a large number of people rallying their cause, right? And actually, the large number of people rallying their cause is what makes the difference. Because when you look at the study of sociopaths and stuff like that, by and large, they are not very successful in life, right? Like most of them, like the few ones that we know about and become very famous because, you know, they did something completely bonkers that no normal person would do. Those are the exception. Most sociopaths, you know, because the problem is that you lie to everybody all the time. Well, eventually people figure it out, right? So every few years you have to recycle your whole life. You have to find new friend. Like eventually your family doesn't want to see you anymore, right? You have trouble keeping a job for a long time. So unless you are like fairly high IQ and have a lot of good skills, you cannot keep it up, you know, for a long time, and eventually you become some sort of pariah. That's what happened to most sociopaths. But sometimes you have an idea in the zeitgeist, you know, that's gonna get a lot of people rallying behind the thing. And we can see a few of them that are working pretty good, right? And all those people that rally behind, they are like, as far as they are concerned, they are doing good, right? They are not bad people. They are just confused. I mean, in some way they are bad people, but they are not bad people in the same sense that the sociopaths are bad people. They want to do good, and they are so sure that of the good goal that, you know, they want to pursue, that they are willing to inflict, you know, violence or restriction of liberties on everybody else, right? Because the goal is so great and so good in their mind that it's justified.
Yeah, and a lot of the like good people are just like too afraid to like call out the bad people because of the negative repercussions and everything. And especially if you have something like a CBDC, then you really like you just open the door for bad people and to do that. So yeah, one idea that like I've almost like recently discovered is that, you know, civilizations just go through these cycles where like in the Roman Empire, for example, you had like very low taxation, very like good rule of law. Like basically all of our laws, at least in Germany, they're all based on a Roman law, right?
Yeah,
like
most Western country are similar to the Roman law, though it's quite funny because most people have forgotten why the Roman law is the way it is. The Roman style government. So any country with like some sort of president or prime minister or stuff like that, and then you have a senate and a parliament. It's a structure of government that we inherited from the Roman Empire. And the reason it was built that way is purposefully to be inefficient. And it is this way because before that, the Roman, they had, you know, emperor, and they were like all powerful and they can do like pretty much whatever. And, you know, it's good when you have a good emperor, but it's really bad when you have a bad one. And in the balance of probability, you know, like most people are average or bad. And, you know, so they eventually came up to that, to create this situation where it's complicated to pass a law. And, you know, so yeah, but yeah, this whole stuff comes from the Roman Empire and the whole arc of money and everything. We can, like, the Roman Empire is probably the best example because it's so unique in its time, right? It's much bigger than everything else that existed at the time. But if you look at the Byzantine Empire, which is like, I guess, an offshoot of the Roman Empire, and the Ottoman Empire and a bunch of others, like all of them, they follow the same arc, and we are following the same arc, right? And this is the arc of money as well. This is something I've been talking about a fair amount of other years, right? So at the beginning, you have a population that uses a certain form of money, whatever that is, right? And as the whole ecosystem grows, you need to have more sophisticated tools to do trade, right? Because like, you know, Rome, for instance, at the time had more than 1 million people living in that city. You cannot trade gold with like 1 million people because it's so inconvenient. Like, you need to weight it, and, you know, what if you don't have the right amount and everything, right? It's so inconvenient. So at some point they create like a form of date-based money, like we have now, right? And this is what happened in the 70s, as far as our Western civilization is concerned. This is when you decide, well, you know, this whole gold stuff. So in some civilization it was gold, in some civilization it was something else, right? But it's always something that have hard money properties. At some point you move to something else, which we did in the 70s, which the Roman eventually did as well. And you create a lot of economic fluidity by doing so, because a bunch of liquidity problems go away. It's much more convenient to trade. So you have like an economic boom that come after that. And we see that as well, you know, like from the 70s to the 90s, Western civilization, you know, there was a ton of innovation, many new companies created, you know. I mean, like, if you look at, you know, like, imagine in the 70s, there was basically no internet. There was no smartphone. There was like everything that we use all day long. There was no video chat like we're doing right now, right? Like the word podcast probably didn't existed. The transformation of life that happened in those years is like very staggering. But the price of that is that at some point people are like, so we can create as much money as we want. and at the beginning they cannot really, right? Because everybody kind of remember, oh, it was before, and so everybody has a sense that, you know, this is gonna be bad, right? But eventually it's been like that for so long that people kind of forget, oh, it was. And when you forget why things are the way they are, suddenly everything that is possible becomes an option. It's like, hey, we've not printed that much money in decades, right? So what is bad after all? Like those old people, they had like old people idea that we shouldn't print money like crazy, you know. But we have very serious problem. We have a pandemic, and we have terrorism, and we have war, and we have like whatever this is, and we need to solve those problems. And what do you know? We need to print a lot of money doing so. And what do you know? We have 10% inflation.
Yeah, and if you want to, and there's what's the website? Yeah, what the fuck happened in 1971.com or something, where you can just see after 1971, like you do get all of those innovations, but the cost is that you get like all of these inequalities, right? You can really see how the rich are getting richer at a much higher rate through the Cantillon effect, which is, you know, like people who are close to the money printer get more money because, or like they get the uninflated money.
Yeah, let's explain that, because it's I think it's very not obvious for people that, like, it's obvious for us because we've been thinking about money for so long, but I think it's not obvious for most people. So let's imagine like the two of us, we are on a desert island and there is just the two of us, and we have like some amount of money, you know, like maybe we have like $100 each of us, and you know, like I don't know, I'm going fishing, and you go gather coconuts, and you know, and so you can buy fish from me and I can buy coconuts from you, right? And it's all good, right? And life is the way it is. But suddenly, you know, let's say I find like $1,000 somewhere on the island, like there is this hidden treasure and there was a bunch of dollar bills in it, and now I have like $1,000 instead of just 100. There's no more fish and coconut than there was before, right? So, but suddenly I can buy a bunch of coconuts from you. But what's gonna happen is that you're gonna be like, hey, you know, like I don't have any coconut anymore, right? So now I'm gonna have to sell them for you for a much higher price, right? And this is what's gonna happen, right? Like prices are gonna go up because as I spend more to buy your coconut, now you have more money, you want more of my fish. So now I have to increase the price of my fish, right? So at the end of the story, what happens is that we both have $500, but now fish and coconuts are 5 times more expensive than they used to be before, and everything works the same, right? Except at the beginning, I was able to buy a bunch of coconut from you that, you know, at the price at the end, I couldn't anymore, right? And so,
and that becomes important when you have like production, like coconuts expire, but if you have like real estate companies and so forth,
yeah, if you can buy productive
those will be bought up
with it, exactly. So if you are close to the money printer, you can spend the newly printed money at the price of the old money when the supply was lower, right? But as this money diffuse in the economy, the price get higher. And so people at the end of the chain, they spend the new money at, you know, at an inflated price, so it's worth much less. So the people that really benefit from that are the people that are close to the money printer, and it's called the Cantillon effect.
Yeah, and you know, it seems it's also the same with miners. Only there, like they have the issue of, okay, how do I get that into the market without it deflating too much? And Yeah, no, and that's one of the big issues that I and Amaury that we're all trying to solve. Is okay, how can we make this a really useful currency so that we like don't have these kinds of issues. Yeah, so
Yeah, so
that's
the great, the great invention, I think, of crypto that very few people are talking about, I think, like everybody are getting excited by the shiny object, but the truly groundbreaking innovation that Satoshi Nakamoto made is that it provided us a tool that had good hard money property and good medium of exchange property. So we don't need like this whole, oh, we move from fiat from hard money to fiat money switcheroo to because the economy becomes too big. We don't need to do it anymore. It's not strictly necessary, right? Because we have a technology that has the potential to be good at both. And that means that the whole reason for this cycle of civilization to happen, because we didn't explain what the next stages are, right? But the next stages is that the inflation goes through the roof, everything gets crazy expensive, and eventually the whole economic system doesn't sustain itself, and then there is no food, and everything gets really bad, and everybody gets poor, and eventually you restart something from scratch, right? That's the next step of the story. It doesn't need to go back to agrarian society, right? Because eventually people are smart enough to figure out that it's not the right direction, but usually it has to hurt pretty bad before people turn that around. So but the thing is, we don't need to go through that cycle anymore. We have the technology. We don't have the adoption though, so we're probably gonna have to go through that cycle. But
and it's I like to think about it as a multi-generational project. It's like, okay, like like we have to keep this torch alive so it can go on and on until eventually it is what we just use in commerce. And there might even be like another cycle where we have another fiat system that's completely built on blockchain, but because like we have still a fiat currency built on top of it, that there might be some kind of inflation, like a hyperinflation cycle again. However, we will always have that base currency that is like that you can't think away, right? Just like with gold, right? Gold has very good store of value properties, but quite poor like medium of exchange properties. And fiat currency has very good medium of exchange currencies, and now we can marry that into one thing.
Yeah, one thing that I found to be quite amazing, and it's telling to which degree the crypto space is missing the real innovation in there, is that the main coin right now, they are not scalable at all, right? Some of them for technical reasons, some of them for more choices that have been made at some point, but they are not scalable, and that means that they are not very good medium of exchange. And it's remarkable to watch what is going on because of that, because what is going on because of that is exactly what has been going on, like why we moved from trading in gold to trading IOUs of gold, and eventually to try something that is not backed by gold in the 70s anymore, to like some crazy inflating worthless paper money that we have now. This same series of steps is being taken, right? And all
only
the
much
details
faster.
much faster, yeah. And all the details are completely different, right? And even from one chain to the next, all the details are completely different, right? But the fundamental steps are exactly the same. It's like, oh, we don't have a good medium of exchange, but let's start trading, like for instance, Bitcoin is on the Lightning Network, right? So you start trading IOUs of what is on the underlying chain, but it's still backed by it, and you can asynchronously settle the transaction once in a while. So this is like the first step. But you encounter liquidity problems when you do that. And what do you know? You have the same on Lightning Network, because fundamentally, even though all the details are different, the technology is completely different, everything is different, but the fundamental problem is the same. The fundamental problem is an economic problem. It's not It's not a technological problem. So you can change all the technological element and change all the detail. The fundamental problem remains the same. And when you do something like when you move from trading the base asset to trading an IOU that is backed by the asset, you solve the convenience problem, but you don't solve the liquidity problem that come with it. And so you have liquidity issue. And so what do you know? Then you're going to create liquidity pools, and they are effectively banks. And eventually something you can already do in the Lightning Network in some specific case, but you can go fractional. So for instance, on the Lightning Network, you cannot go fractional with anyone, but you can have two nodes that trust each other that lets the balance in their channel go negative, right? And nobody would know it, right? Only those two nodes. And obviously, if one of the nodes defraud the other, then they are screwed, right? But if you are one entity, you want to provide several nodes and you want to provide like good routing qualities and stuff like that, you can have your node between them that lets the balance go negative, so that there is always a route through you, and you rebalance that, you know, asynchronously. So what did you do? Well, you just created fractional reserve banking. And why did you do that? Well, for the same reason fractional banking was created in the first place, is because when you don't do that, you have liquidity issues. And, you know, the fundamental problem is that there is hard money and there is a good medium of exchange, and they are not the same. And all of that, you know, like this is the original sin in a way, right? All of the trouble, they just emerge from that. And the new crypto space is building the equivalent of the old one. I would argue, I argue sometime in worse, because I mean, because the established banking system have been there for a long time, and that has weeded out, you know, some of the bad stuff.
And it is true. Like when I do business in crypto, like I for example sometimes use USDT on Tron, but because that apparently is the best stablecoin other than USDC. But you know, like and the problem there is that I have to juggle two different currencies, right? I have to have Tron, and then that changes, and then I have to also juggle the USDT and so forth. And it's just this complete mess. And then try to imagine doing that with like your second part. It's like, okay, I can only pay you in this currency here. Now you have to learn how to use this currency, and how you have to learn that currency. And I think that also, like, I'm curious what you think, because like why like you could say, but well, then just use like, I don't know, eCash directly or Bitcoin directly, or you know, all these coins, these underlying coins directly. However, for me, if I want to like have a good operating business, then it's just very hard to do it with a currency that, you know, from certain month to month just decreases by like 60% or something.
There is a chicken and egg issue. So there are two problems with that. Like the first one is a bit of a chicken and egg issue. So because the economy is much smaller, the economy in those coins, than, you know, the economy say in euro or dollar, or, you know, some of the main currency. Every time there is a move, it impacts the price much more, right? So if like I sell, like even if I sell $1 million to buy €1 million, it's not gonna affect the price of the dollar and the euro by that much, right? But if I start doing that for many of those cryptocurrency, then it's gonna affect the price, you know, at least a few percent. And so as a result, it's less stable, and because it's less stable, also it's an impediment to use it as money, right? Because money has three characteristics. We talked about two of them, that is medium of exchange and store of value. But the third one is unit of account. And so unit of account is effectively you use it to measure the value of things, right? Via the price system. So when I say, I don't know, like the gas costs €2 a liter, for instance, I'm measuring the value of gas in euros, and I'm using euros as you know, like a measure, a unit of measure for the value of gas. And so if the price is changing all the time, you cannot use it as a unit of account. It just doesn't work. So, but to get there, you need to have an economy that is big enough so that people getting in and out and, you know, buying it and spending it and all of that don't affect the price that much. It needs to affect the price a little, right? But if it varies of several percent, you know, every day or every week, it's just not a good unit of account. So there is that, and but there is also another effect that is blatant to me in the crypto space that comes from the fact that people speculate more than they use the coin, and this is causing. So this is causing an economy where a lot of people have revenue in crypto in the space, but expenses in fiat, right? The biggest example is miners, but people that use the crypto as money, they have a stabilizing effect on the ecosystem. People that use the crypto as a speculating vehicle, they have an amplifying effect on the price variation. Why is that? Because, well, they have expenses in fiat, right? So for instance, if they are miners, they pay the electricity in fiat. If they are, you know, trader, they're gonna pay their taxes in fiat, and so on, right? And the impact of that is that if the price, I'm gonna say Bitcoin, you know, for simplicity, but the same remains true for other crypto assets, right? If the price of Bitcoin go up, well, suddenly I'm a miner, I'm a trader, whatever. I need to sell less of them to cover my expenses. So the supply on the market diminishes. And what happens when the supply on the market diminishes, but the demand remains the same, then the price go up. So I need to sell less of them to cover my expenses. So the supply diminishes, so the price go up. So I need to sell less of them, right? So
and
when
usually
the
have
price,
this amplifying effect that like speculators
exactly,
or NGU, let me buy, because that's totally rational.
exactly, and the other way around, by the way, right? And this is why we see those like super violent swings. It's a sign that we have way more speculation than we have usage, right? And as long as we have more speculation than we have usage, the price variation are being amplified, which means we're never going to get anything stable. On the other hand, if you have more usage than speculation, so which is happened with the dollar or the euro or something like that, right? Like there is the forex market where you can speculate on the value of those things, but there are vastly more people using the dollar or the euro every day to buy stuff than there are people speculating on the forex, right? So as a result, the euro and the dollar remained relatively stable, while the crypto assets, it's completely the opposite. There are way more people speculating on them than people using them, and therefore the price goes right.
Yeah, and how
this create this unit of account problem, right?
Yeah, how? But so I had you had the opposite case where like if you start using it, because now like, you know, I work for a Bitcoin ABC, I'm building the indexer, and now I get an income in eCash. And like once you actually get to experience that, then you realize the effect that has on the adoption of eCash. Because now I have all of this eCash. I mean, I could just dump it on the market, but then first of all, that might affect the price. But then also I have like all of the new KYC issues and so forth. But it would be much, for me, it's much simpler to just like ask people like, do you accept eCash, right? Can I pay in eCash? It might go up, it might go down, you know. And what I realized is that once you start paying people in eCash, and you know, Bitcoin ABC, GNC, they don't have another currency. They can only pay people in. It's almost like a government in that case, and you know that's probably the closest approximation you can have. Is you're basically forced to pay people on eCash, and then now they are faced with the issue. Okay, what do I do with that now? Like I spend all of these hours working. I have this thing which is valuable. Do I just like throw it in an exchange, or do I like ask people if they accept it? And then, you know, you kick the can down the road almost, right? Like you just create like this network of people who have that. But how do you think that has a stabilizing effect on the price?
Oh, because when the price go up, you're richer, you spend more instead of spending less, right? And on the other hand, if the price crash, you're like, well, it's not doing so good right now. I'm gonna limit my expenses and like go through the bad time, until it goes back up.
And I think we see that with the US dollar too. If there's like a big inflation and prices go up, people spend less. So that should have a dampening effect on the inflation. However, what happens?
That should accept they are printing like crazy, so it doesn't.
Yeah, because what then happens is that people are like upset that they can't spend as much, and then they're like, please, government, give money. And then they give them money. Like my grandma always tells that story. Like she lived through the whole inflation cycle in Poland, and they, like during the Soviet times, they were printing money like crazy. And they have these like more centrally planned stuff, and then for mismanagement reasons or whatever, the prices went up, right? Like there were fewer goods and services in the economy, so prices went up, but wages didn't go up, of course. And then they were like, oh, we need currency, give us a pay rise, give us more money. And then they increased the wages and everything, but there was no more wealth there. So she could see how with
you need to create stuff.
Yeah,
you need to create stuff or provide services. Otherwise you're just creating numbers, but there is no actual wealth that is created. It's just an accounting trait, without the creation of value. And worse than that, usually so the whole price system is a way for society to organize itself. And I think this is also something that is greatly misunderstood. Actually, I had a discussion recently with so there is a French dude that makes science about group behaviors and stuff like that, right? And so it's well known that so humans tend to create hierarchy, when they organize themselves in a group. But this has some scalability issues because at some point, the group becomes so large that the people at the top don't really know what's going on in the group anymore. And so it's difficult for them to make, the right decision for the group. But in the same field of study, they also study other animals, like say ants, for instance. And ants, they are very decentralized, right? Like there is not the ant commander that decide what every ant is going to do. It's like each ant provide information to the ants that are around them through pheromones, and they organize through that, and you have a behavior that comes out of it that is working. And this dude said, like, basically, we don't have that for humans, right? And I was like, well, that's not quite true, because we have money, and this is what money is doing, right? So if there is a lot of demand for something, but there is not a lot of it, then the price is very high. And because the price is very high, then people want money, right? So what are they gonna do? They're gonna produce this thing that is in low supply and high demand. And as more people do that, well, suddenly the supply is not as scarce anymore, so the price becomes a bit lower. So suddenly the new people, they're like, oh, this is not the thing to do anymore, right? I'm gonna do this other thing that is more valuable because that other thing is in high supply. And conversely, the other way around, if for some reason there is no demand for something anymore, say a VCR, or a tape recorder, or like whatever, right? Those things, well, there is no demand for them anymore. So there is still the same supply, so the price craters through the ground, and people are like, well, it's not worth it for us to do those things anymore. So we're not going to spend resources on doing that anymore, and we're going to spend our time, energy, resources, whatever, doing something else that is more valuable. And so this whole price system is a way for everybody to coordinate in the economy in a way that maximizes outcome. I mean, I shouldn't use the word maximizes, because it's maximizing outcome like better than alternatives, right? Because if you were able to know all the information and do the perfect calculation, we are probably very far from the optimal, right? And people can point out, things in the economy that are misbehaving all the time, right? And some of them are caused by the government or whatnot, but I think it's a bit easy for a libertarian to say it's always the government. Sometimes some part of the economy is just not working properly because people messed up, right?
or you have a self-healing mechanism there. So if you have like an industry that's like totally diluted, and you don't have like the government somehow artificially propping that up or something, because I think quite a bit of the crypto degeneracy might be through like people going like you can see that when like whenever there was these Trump bucks, whatever, you could see like the amount of the number of deposits were exactly like $2,000. Like there was like the graph, and there was like $2,000, and then like the remaining deposits, because people just all gambled it on crypto. So you can see that trend that like the government often amplifies problems that occur.
It's expected. So right now it's changing, and it's interesting because crypto, at least in the beginning, it was sold as a solution to the kind of time that we're seeing right now, but it have never gone through this kind of time before, right? So we may speculate on what's going to happen, but it's like, for me, it's going to be the true test of crypto is going to be the next 3 years or so. It's going to be a true test of crypto.
So I think it's important that like people who aren't like just in for the gains, we are more like, no, like we need this tool, right? Like I need to be able to like how am I supposed to send you something, right? Like I could send you, I don't know, gold coins or whatever. I could send you a SEPA payment, but at some point that'll become like really complicated.
Well, so here is the thing. For many years now, we've had a lot of money printing and very low interest rate, which means that not only there is a lot of money in circulation, but at the same time, there is a ton of, it's easy to get loans, right? And so there is a ton of liquidity going around. And, like even if you didn't make a loan yourself, right? Like maybe you bought your house several years ago, now you're selling it because you're moving somewhere else. And the price of the home like doubled in a few years. Like what happened there? Well, it's because the people buying the home, they can get the loan much more easily than they could before, right? So they are competing against each other, and it's driving the price crazy high. So you have this effect where there is a ton of liquidity, but at the same time, there is inflation. So now people, they need to do something with all that liquidity. And the problem is that you want to put them into productive assets as much as possible, right? But say you put them in real estate. Well, as more and more people put money into real estate, well, they're competing against each other, right? So the rent versus, like, when you compare the rent to the capital of the home, like the benefits, you get out of it gets smaller and smaller and smaller because all those people are getting into real estate and competing against each other. So, okay, so, well, real estate is not such a good deal anymore. Maybe I can buy stocks, right? And the same effect happen with stocks. The return gets lower and lower because all those people are competing against each other for those returns. And eventually you run out of stuff to buy, right? So like, oh, I'm going to buy Dogecoin or whatever, right? Because it's a funny picture of a dog. Like anything is better than the dollar anyway, because the dollar is losing value, and there is more and more of it coming every day your way. So this is what happens, right? And this is why we see those crypto markets that are going crazy with like apes and dogs and whatnot. It's probably not going to be the case over the next 3 years, I'd say, because the interest rates are higher. We're in a recession. There is not all that money flying around that is like literally looking for something to be bought, like, so it's going to be a very different game.
What do you think will the next cycle of innovation entail? Because usually every bull run has underlying on it some like legit innovation that like people build that out, and then you get kinds of
I don't even agree with that, because like, okay, look, the last bull run was driven, I'd say, a lot by NFC. Would you agree with that? NFT, yeah.
NFC, maybe the next one.
Yeah, NFT. But I mean, we had Namecoin in 2012 or so, maybe 2011 even. I don't remember the date. I don't have the date.
Well, Satoshi talked about it. So
Satoshi talked about it, right? So it was like 2011 or something, maybe 2010 even. So And what is Namecoin? Namecoin is NFTs, right? It's like a domain name. It's like a coin that can do domain name registration. And each domain name is an NFT. And you actually had a domain name craze in the 2000s during the tech bubble, which was like the origin, and people were buying domain name and flipping them and stuff NFT. Like that. But that's just like NFT. That's the same. That's the exact same thing, right? So I'm not convinced that there is actually something real new with this whole NFT thing. Technologically, it was done before. There were colored coin and name coin and like a bunch of other technologies to do NFT before. But even if you put the technology aside as a business, well, there was the domain name craze of the 2000s, and there are many examples. So I don't think there was anything that was really new there under the sun.
Yeah, that makes
new
sense.
Packaging, like good marketing pitch and stuff like that, but there is nothing really new under the sun.
What do you think about like this new thing now coming with Web3, which is basically like Web 1 was just, like you just have content basically it's the university just gives you the content and you can access it remotely and browse through.
But it's like you make your own web page and it's static and stuff like that. And Web 2 is like, well, no, the server is smart and you can post comments and react and share and whatnot. Yeah.
And then Web 3, as far as I understand, is that like even the infrastructure is hosted by the users. So, what I'm working on now with Stamp is where you can host your own like mail server or something, and it's all connected in one thing and so forth. So first of all, what do you think is Web3? Do you think it's a real thing? And do you think it might be a catalyst for the next bull market, which might take years, but
it's probably going to be a catalyst for the next bull market, but what it means exactly is going to be defined during the next bull market. I mean, like all those terms, they all start as buzzword and we kind of refine the meaning after the fact. It was the same for Web 2. I don't know if you were too young at the time or if you remember, but like at the beginning, it was in the 2000s, there was this tech bubble and Web 2 was thrown around all over the place at the time to mean like anything and everything. Some people called Web 2 e-commerce, some people Web 2 was forums and stuff like that. It was just like Web 2 was whatever new use case you thought would become popular in the future. That was Web 2, right? And Web 3 kind of is taking the same umbrella. Actually, everything that is being new, everything that is being built right now in crypto is being called Web3, whatever that means, right? And whatever is going to be successful at the end of that is going to be Web3, and we're going to pretend that it's always what it meant.
Yeah, I think that's a correct assessment.
So Web3 is definitely drive the next bull run.
Yeah, I might be biased because I'm working on something that I think will be called Web3 in the future. So we got, I think what will be very, very important will be progressive web apps, because the restrictions on like normal apps, especially regarding crypto, will become stricter and stricter. So right now, like RaiPay is basically available everywhere, but specifically they were like, no, please uncheck China, because we are not allowed to list any kind of cryptocurrency app in the Chinese app store. However, if you have a progressive web app, then it's just like another website, only it functions pretty much exactly the same as an app, right? You don't get all the functionalities, but you get like a limited set of them, and then also like the interactive stuff where like you actually are able to interact with other people through like not purely monetary means.
So that's very interesting, because there is a ping pong there that has been going on, and same like way before crypto, like where things go to the edge and there is a class of problem that come with that, and people get fed up and they start to centralize things. And then there are another set of problems that come with that, and it goes back to the edge and back and forth, right? So there was a big movement in, I don't know, the 80s for mainframes, right? Where you would have this giant computer that would run all the desktop for everybody in the company, and everybody, like, people didn't really have a computer at their desk. They had like a dumb terminal that would connect to the mainframe, and you would do all your operation through the mainframe. And, you know, eventually people got their computer on their desk, but eventually, like, we started centralizing again on the web services that you access through your browser. And then with this, you know, like, there is this constant ping pong between the two. So it's nothing new.
Basically, Facebook is just a giant mainframe.
Yeah, Facebook is the equivalent of a mainframe way. Yeah. So this is happening, and you're gonna have ping pongs there, and there are economic reasons for that in addition, right? Where you can get economies of scale in the mainframe, but then the mainframe becomes less efficient because it's less tuned to your need, and it's also, you know, like, further away. So at some point, you know, like, one gets more optimized, but at some point you get, you know, to the bottom of the barrel, where every, you know, incremental amelioration becomes harder and harder to get, and the other one catches up, and vice versa. So right now we had a lot of cloud stuff. So I guess it's probably time for things to come back to the edge a bit.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, and I think there will still be some kind of like hybrid. For example, things like Filecoin, I think, will be quite influential in the future, where, like, you have decentralized apps, but the, like, you know, there's no single point of storage that can, you know, censor stuff. Because I think that's what many people in, like, the, like, I guess, non-crypto but political realm are, like, concerned about, is like censorship and everything. And with crypto, we get, like, this very like, and with decentralization, or, like, you know, whatever the opposite of mainframe is, you get this mechanism of being able to,
well, the opposite
run your own infra.
of the mainframe is the PC, right? The PC killed the mainframe.
Yeah,
like the personal
computer. Yeah.
Well, it's true. I'm not convinced for storage, because storage right now is very centralized with, you know, people have a Google account or Dropbox or whatever. And actually the machine that we use, the storage took a big hit when we decided to move to SSD versus, you know, versus spinning disks that we had before, HDD. Yeah. And we made that choice because we had those centralizing services, and the performances of SSD are so much better, right? But the cost per unit of storage went way up with the SSD, and so comparatively, you know, we didn't get we don't get as much storage. Like, look, for instance, in the early 2000s, I bought myself a computer with 120 gigs of hard drive, right? And it was fairly big at the time, but it was not crazy either, right? It was on the big end of the spectrum. Now, you know, if I go to Apple and buy one of the latest laptops, I'm gonna get 256 gig, right? So it went 2x in 20 years. Right, that's by computer standards, it's not very much, right? But at the same time, the SSD that you're gonna get in your Apple device is at least an order of magnitude faster than my hard drive that I had at the time. So, you know, we traded that, and for our storage, we are using, you know, stuff going through the network.
Yeah, Dropbox and everything.
Yeah, so I'm not sure.
But why do you think Filecoin won't replace Dropbox?
Yeah, for some use case it probably can, but in general, no, because the economics of it pretty much guarantee that it's going to be more expensive.
Because it's just more inefficient, right? Like, you have people who run their own stuff. You have like,
you can imagine
also have
that
the volatility and everything.
Yeah, Dropbox has servers that are dedicated to have as much storage as possible for as cheap as possible. they can mutualize the maintenance cost and all of that, right? Because they have all of them in the data center. So there is one dude that can cater for them all. When you scatter that all over the place through many actors, it's necessarily going to be more expensive. The problem is
you also get the like people running huge data centers for Filecoin, which is probably what will happen with Filecoin, right?
Yeah, but why wouldn't they do it in their name rather than do it for Filecoin? That's true. The only reason they would do it for Filecoin is because they can make more money doing so, which means that it's going to be more expensive for Filecoin, right?
That seems self-evident.
Yeah, that's the only way this is going to happen. So
yeah, because if I have like a service that just has like a couple of terabytes and it's not Dropbox, but it's something smaller and it like undercuts Dropbox or something, then of course they're gonna like provide that through their service.
And you could say, well, it's gonna provide higher quality of service, but that's not a given. And in any case, it's never gonna beat this, right? Which is like a SSD for for people who
just
don't.
Just a Samsung. Is that a phone?
It's smaller than a phone. It's crazy small actually. It's the size of a credit card roughly, and it's several terabytes. So and the speed I'm gonna get with that is not limited by the network. There is no latency issue or anything, right? So this is always gonna beat either Filecoin or Dropbox in terms of quality of service and whatever, right? For physical reasons, there is no way Dropbox or Filecoins or anything that is remote to have better performance than this that I have on my desk that is directly plugged into the computer.
I think the only thing is that it is more reliable. And now with SSDs, I think that kind of goes away. So when you had HDDs, like it was almost mandatory to back up everything because it was just a given that at some point
you'd be surprised SSD are less reliable than hard drives.
Oh, really? Because I never had an SSD break, whereas I did have HDDs break.
Well, it depends the use case you have of them, but each cell in a SSD has a number of write cycle before it degrades too much, which is usually around 10,000. So if you have workload that are write heavy, for instance, you're gonna wear your SSD down at crazy speed. Let me give you an example. Actually, when I was working at Facebook, we used so if Facebook has this massive amount of data, right, and you have several layers of cache that are faster and faster for the data that is accessed more often, right? So at the bottom of it, you have like databases that runs on hard drives. And then you have backups that are even slower, right? But as far as things that are live, and on top of that, you have servers that don't have all the data, but that run on SSD. And the algorithm they are using specifically use the SSD as a rolling barrel so that you use all the cells in the SSD equally. Because those SSD are being trashed in months doing that. Like the write throughput is so high that those SSD are being trashed. It's not the case for hard drive. They tend to last longer. So the problem with hard drives usually are mechanical, right? Because they are spinning.
Yeah, because I think I ran into those issues because I was having them in my laptop and then I was taking my laptop to another place and then it
Yeah, so in laptops specifically, SSD are actually better, but it's because of the mechanics. It's not because of the storage itself. If you bring this hard drive that is mechanically broken through some specialist, they can extract the data from them. The data is still on the disk. The mechanical part is gonna wear, but as far as the data themselves are concerned, you get more data corruption on the SSD themselves, and they tend to be less durable. So if you write data on SSD and write data on a hard drive and put them in a storage and don't touch them and come back many years later, it's much more likely that your data is going to be good on the hard drive than it is on the SSD.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's a good argument. Yeah, so you have less mechanical, it's like an HDD. If you have mechanical stress, then it won't withstand that. But an HDD, like you can do reads and writes much more frequently.
Yeah, it doesn't wear in the same way that the SSD wears.
Yeah, and you always have these trade-offs, and we have the same thing.
Well, not really. You have this cross-point technology that is sold by several brands. I think probably the most well-known product is Optane. Intel have those Optane storage stuff. So
how does that work?
They sell them for a price that is stupidly high. So the technology is called cross-point. And obviously, because Americans like to do that, it's not cross like a cross, you put an X, so if you want to Google for it or whatever, it's X and point like a point in one word, right? So X point, I guess, but it's cross point. And it's a different technology. It's effectively non-volatile RAM that is, I mean,
like
way slower than SDRAM, but closer in terms of performance to SDRAM than it is to SSD. It's like stupidly fast for a non-volatile storage, and it's non-volatile. So, but right now it's so expensive that people use them.
And does it degrade as quickly?
Like I don't think it degrades the same way SSD does. It's pretty good stuff. It's just crazy expensive.
So that's basically the eCash. That's basically the eCash of storage, right? It only has good properties, except it's very cheap. Or that one,
yeah. So it's not cheap, but I don't think that is especially that expensive to produce. I guess it's because
they just cornered the market, and
it's so much better. There are not
patents.
that many manufacturers that know what to do this, so
and patents, obviously,
and probably there are patents.
Yeah. So you can see that I think we have kind of the same, like we have these trade-offs in crypto as well, where, like, for example, we have very private coins like Monero, Zcash, and so forth, and they have they have great properties regarding privacy, right? However, you get a trade-off where, like, you lose like scalability and auditability and also like user experience. Whereas with eCash, and let's forget about Bitcoin a little bit, because like they mainly just have bad trade-offs all over the place. But with eCash, we get like this very high throughput, very high scalability, very like you can really optimize it for fast disk access. And right now, Bitcoin D is very much optimized for SSDs, and maybe at some point we have to optimize for Optane and so forth. And the Corona indexer that I'm working on will also be optimized for SSDs. Someone actually ran that on HDDs, and they were like, I've been running it for like 3 weeks and it still isn't synced. I'm like, what? It takes like 1 day for me. And I was like, what's your setup? And it's like, well, I have this old HDD. And I'm like, okay, like this is the wrong technology. I'm sorry. So yeah, I don't really know what to do about that. Like, we can't just write code bases for like really old software. But yeah, for like really old hardware. What do you think? Do you think, like, there's this argument that if you just have a really high throughput blockchain, like if you have, like, I don't know, worst case 1 million transactions per second, which of course is completely ludicrous, like that basically runs the entire economy of the entire globe, maybe like 1 time, like 10 times over or something, I guess, if you take in all the other like credit cards and stuff. But that could create a huge amount of privacy, because there's just this torrent of information that is very hard to correlate. Because or do you think that's not the case?
Yeah, no, I'm not convinced that this is true, because swifting through a huge amount of data is very hard for people, but it's not so hard for computers. They are very patient and very thorough kind of machine, and so they can do it. And then, like, obviously, if you have a snapshot at a given time, it's going to be very difficult to extract any meaningful information from it. But if you observe the system for like a few weeks or a few months, you're going to see the pattern emerge, right? And each transaction that you're going to do in itself is not very informative or relevant, right? But as you do them more and more, there is a pattern that's going to emerge from that. And there are mathematical models that you can use to extract those patterns. I mean, this is what Google and Facebook are doing effectively, right? they have a billion gajillion users that do random crap all day long, and they extract useful information and all of that. It's quite creepy how much information they have on you, and a lot of it that you have never given them, right? So, for instance, big Google or Facebook, they can know like what is your religion or what is your sexual orientation or whatever. Like even if you never Googled anything about that or never search anything about that, they can correlate your behavior with other group of people for which they know, and guess with a very high probability that, you know, like here is the kind of music that you like and the kind of movie that you like and the kind of car that you're gonna like to drive, and you know, here is like what religion you're likely to be and all of that. Like even if you never told them, you know, like the thing that they know about you, they can correlate with users that have the same, you know, the same patterns and make guess with like very high degree of confidence. So
yeah,
so that's
and you
no
can do
good.
the same thing for chain analysis, basically.
Yeah,
You just correlate, maybe do some machine learning, and
yeah, and
you'll
actually some
extract
people
behavior.
think that eventually you'll be able to do that with Monero. It's
So
gonna take a much bigger amount of data, but you know, eventually we're gonna be good enough at this so that you can do it for Monero. I don't know if it's true or false. At the time, it doesn't look very doable. But, you know, it's something to because the way Monero works, it's not zero knowledge, right? It's with ring signature. So every time you spend some Monero, what you broadcast to the blockchain is that I'm spending one of those coins, right? You choose a set of coins, say, you know, 7, 8, 10, whatever. The bigger it is, the bigger the transaction, and the bigger the transaction fee you're gonna pay, right? But you choose a set of input, and one of those input is the one that you're actually spending, and the other one are just decoy. And then via cryptographic trickery, you can provide a proof that you spend one of those input, but you don't know which one. And you also provide like a unique token that is connected to your input. So if you were to spend the same input again, the mathematical construct would produce the same token.
So the token is unique, and that's kind of the
the token is unique based on the input.
The UTXO mechanism, like the where you destroy the input because you can only use that token once.
Yeah, exactly. Except you don't know which output it is, right? You know, this is one of those. So the data mining that you have to do gets significantly more difficult because, you know, it's not one transaction that is like that. It's all the transaction on the chain, right? So
how do the outputs in Monero, because like the inputs, it makes sense, right? You have a bunch of inputs, a lot of them are decoy, and then you have a signature, like a ring signature for them, and then you have like this token thing. But where do you send the coins to? Do you know that?
Yeah, you send the coins to UTXO. Well, to TXO technically, because you can never know if TXO is spent or unspent.
Oh, so it looks like in Bitcoin almost, like it's just a public key?
Yeah, so the output is not just a public key because the amount is the amount is secret, right? So it's a more complicated commitment, but effectively, yeah, it's like a specific commitment that commit to an amount that is secret and public private key pair. And if you know the amount and the private key associated to that TXO, you can spend it. But you're gonna spend it with like a bunch of other TXO again, right? So people never really know if you're spending that one or another one.
So it's basically a built-in mixer. Okay, that makes sense. Do you think the same issue will be in Zcash if you use shielded transactions, which right now are actually quite usable even on mobile? Like I think the last time I sent a Zcash transaction, it took like 5 seconds or so.
Yeah, it takes maybe they made further improvement, but last time I checked, it takes somewhere between 40 and 50 megs of memory to compute the signature and a few seconds. The exact number in terms of time is going to depend on the device, right? But typically a few seconds, which
that's actually pretty good. Like
it's
40 to
getting in the
50 minutes.
usable territory. Yeah. Obviously you cannot do that on the credit card or, something like that. But phone are powerful enough so that you can do that. Now, I'd say so Zcash is also zero knowledge, right? So the big beef that there is between Monero and Zcash is that obviously Zcash, some transactions are shielded and some transactions are not, right? So the transactions that are shielded are completely opaque in Zcash. It's zero knowledge, right? So it means it means what it says on the box. You learn nothing about the transaction if you don't have the relevant key to decrypt.
Well, except it's like somebody created that UTXO at some point.
Yeah, you learn that somebody made a transaction. You have no idea what it's spending, what it's creating, what there is in there. You just know that there is a transaction and you have a proof that this transaction is valid, right? And that's all you know. You know literally nothing else. Though not all transactions are using that technology in Zcash, so your anonymity set is smaller. And the question is like, because let's push it to the extreme. If you are the only person using that privacy technology, everybody knows it's you. It doesn't matter how good the privacy technology is. Everybody knows it's you.
Yeah, if you have to go through KYC once, the entire system is worthless.
You need to have an anonymity set that is bigger. So the thing is, in Monero, your anonymity set is
everybody.
Kind of, but you are not
like a random set.
Your input are not all the inputs, right? So it's like whatever the inputs are, but it's on all the transactions. Whereas on Zcash, your anonymity set is everybody that used the shielded transaction technology, but nobody else. So your anonymity set per transaction is probably bigger, but overall in the system, much less information is shielded. And there are other ways you leak information, right? Say, I receive one Zcash, put it in a shielded transaction, and then I get one Zcash out from somewhere in the shielded system. Well, there is a very high probability that someone can make a reasonable guess as to what the circuit of the money was. So you leak information through the non-shielded part of the system. Also, one of the problem with Zcash, I mean, it's both a blessing and a curse. It's completely opaque, right? So if there is a flaw that is found in the technology at some point, there is no way to ever know that the flaw is being exploited or anything, right? It's completely impossible to audit. Someone could be printing Zcash like crazy since a year ago, and we wouldn't know about it unless that person sell everything
and then actually, and like that actually happened. I mean, they didn't print like crazy, but there was a bug in Zcash where like
there was a bug in their old shielded transaction technology. So the new one, as far as we know, is secure, but it's as far as we know, right? Maybe someone knows something that we don't.
Yeah,
and it's not.
And the same thing happened with Monero. And I actually looked at the PR that fixed the issue for Monero, because you had to be super stealth about that, right? So they did some UI change, and
Monero,
you could see
but in Monero it's different because it was possible to detect if the flow was used or not.
Interesting. How did they detect that?
It was actually the bug was that there was a way to produce two different, I explained that you have a ring signature that cover a set of input, and it produces a unique token that identify one of the input without really identifying it, right? It's like, if you run the same algorithm, spending the same input, you're gonna get the same token. That's the guarantee. But actually there was a trick, such as you could produce two different tokens by abusing the system in some way. So you could spend a UTXO twice if you wanted to, using that vulnerability. Obviously, that means infinite money, right? Because you can spend one UTXO twice, you cannot spend it again, right? But now you created UTXO that you can spend twice, and what do you know? It's exponential. So
yeah,
you do a few run of that, and you have a lot of Monero. But it's possible to detect it's possible to detect that you use that.
But
So
they also detected the bug in Zcash, though, right? Anyway,
there was a bug in Zcash. In Zcash, it's impossible to know if the bug was exploited or not.
How did they discover though in Monero that it? Oh no, but I think they did figure out that it was used in Zcash.
In Monero, right? It was not used in Zcash. I don't know. I don't think there is any way to know.
Okay. Well, and there could be some, like there could be different kinds of bugs, right? There could be a bug that you can figure out because like it like leaks.
So there is actually there is a mathematical proof that any system that hides information, when you break it, it's either gonna lose all the information or it's gonna spill the beans. Right? When you break the math, it's always gonna be one or both, and you cannot do like something in between or something that has both characteristics. It's literally mathematically impossible. Because I mean, it's obviously, I'm not going to do a mathematical demonstration here, but it's the intuition behind it, right? The intuition behind it is that either you have a secret that, like, you know, the data is in the system and you have a secret that allows you to know what the data actually is, right?
Yeah, so basically like you have to reveal.
And like, in that case, well, if the cryptography is broken, then you know all the data, right? But also,
it's like if there was a bug in ECC that revealed the private key, right?
Yeah. For instance,
through the public key. Yeah.
On the other hand, you can have systems that are like, it's impossible to produce the right output unless you know a secret. Like there is some unknown in the system that we assume that nobody knows. And no, I'm expressing myself poorly. There is something that is unknown in the system. So for instance, if we take the way commitment to amounts are made in system like Nimblewimble, I don't know, right? The way it works is that there are 2 points that are used on the curve. And it's assumed that nobody knows the factorization between those 2 points. And because nobody knows the factorization between those 2 points, you can assume that when people produce proof to you using those 2 points, they had to know some information and base themselves on some information. And you can make conclusion based on that the whole system is correct. But if I were to find a way to factorize 1 point into the other, for instance, and publish that tomorrow, then everybody can start proving anything about anything on Nimblewimble. Because the integrity, like the integrity of the chain rely on the fact that there is some information that nobody knows that is impossible to discover. And because you can make that assumption, then you know that when they produce result to you, you know that therefore they had to know something else to be able to produce those results. But there's actually no information in the system. You can produce all the results. If you knew that secret, if you know the factor between the 2 points, you can produce proof of anything. You can prove that you own all the UTXO. You can prove any amount in the UTXO. You can prove whatever you want because there is no information in there.
And the same thing could be true for Zcash. And you could just create proofs like crazy if you found such.
So there are some systems, when you break them, everything is revealed, and other, when you break them, then there is nothing in there anymore. All the information is gone because the information relied on some secret existing. And you can.
And we don't know yet if Zcash is either of the two.
Oh, Zcash, I think.
Or do we know it's either of the two?
But it's a mixture.
So wait a second.
No, but there are several mechanisms in Zcash.
Oh, and like one of them could be the one thing.
Right. So for instance, the transaction that you publish is encrypted, like cryptographically with a private public key, right? So that one is the first category. You reveal that secret key, you can decode the transaction and know what the transaction is.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, but then there is a proof, and the proof is a zero knowledge proof that say basically, I know a secret key that decode that transaction such as its spend input that are valid and yada, 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 right? And I can prove that to you in zero knowledge. That zero knowledge proof is of the second category. there is less information in the proof that there is in total, right? Like the proof is, the intuition is there because the proof is fixed size and you can use it on any transaction.
I think I have to watch that again. Like it's going a little bit over my head, but so here's a question. So you seem to be really knowledgeable about zero knowledge proofs. Why? Or at least
I wouldn't describe myself as an
it could be up your
expert.
alleyway. It could be up your alleyway.
I know enough to be able to understand the trade-offs and stuff like that. I wouldn't know enough, for instance, to come up with my own scheme to do zero knowledge proof or whatever. I'm definitely not an expert in the field. I know enough to understand how they are used and what you can build with them.
So, but you could, instead of working on eCash, like you instead of forking Zcash, instead of forking Bitcoin Cash, you could have forked or Bitcoin, you could have forked Zcash. What you call easy cash. Why didn't you go for, or like why are you working on eCash rather than say Zcash?
Okay, so while I think those privacy technology, they are important, I think there is a problem with Zcash in the fact that it's baked into the core protocol. And I think that's a mistake that everybody seems to want to make these days, baking privacy in the base layer. The problem is that you lose auditability and a bunch of stuff like that, right? So what you want is that, and so you lose the hard money property of the system, right? And this is a trade-off, and both sides of that trade-off are valuable, probably, right? I mean, like certainly to me they are, which means that they are for at least one person.
Quod erat demonstrandum.
Exactly. So, once you bake the privacy technology into your base layer, you're screwed. Like you lost the first one, like irremediably, it's gone. You cannot recover it, right? So you want to build your privacy technology in such a way that if it blows up for the people that use the privacy technology, but not for the other users. And
yes,
and I think this is an issue with Zcash at the moment, because the zero knowledge stuff is built into the core layer, and I don't think this is the right trade-off, because you're always gonna have this question mark. You know, is someone minting Zcash like crazy? You don't know. You can never know.
So how do we, like, I know the roadmap of eCash a little bit. How would you like to see it solved on eCash?
Yeah, so people know that we're working on Avalanche. Actually, we have a working prototype for, I'd say, quite some time. I know people are getting impatient, but when you launch something on the mainnet, if it's broken, I'm gonna tell you, you're gonna like it even less than waiting. But yeah, so we are developing Avalanche, and Avalanche allows to solve a long-standing problem that existed in the space. It's like, how do you create a side chain or drive chain or whatever, or do you make the reverse peg, right? So the question is, it's a question that I've been in the space like since at least 2010. Like it's a very early question. It's like, okay, I want to use those tokens in a system that have different rules, right? That works differently. For instance, it has privacy. What do I do, right? So I can build another chain-like thing that have different rules and different characteristics. I can move my coin there. That is a solved problem. The problem is no, how do I move my coin the other way around?
Without everybody having to follow those new rules. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is actually a very difficult problem. That is an exceedingly difficult problem. And so far, we had no satisfying solution. I guess before Avalanche, the best solution was drive chain, probably. But the drive chain, to move the coin backs, it takes a couple of months.
Oh,
right? because there is like a very long process that needs to take place to move the coin back. Though in practice, it's probably okay because you can probably have liquidity providers that be like, okay, I'm gonna receive your token in a couple of months, and I'm gonna give you a fresh token instead, and I'm taking a fee on the transaction, and voila, right? So in practice, you can probably do the reverse spec quite quickly, but the technology itself is taking a long time to do the reverse pay. On the other end, with Avalanche, you can do that much faster, and without everybody having to follow what the other chain is doing, right? So basically, if everybody is gonna have to follow, oh, there is a pool of money that has been sent to that side chain, or we call them subnet. So there's a pool of money that have been sent to the subnet. People that follow the rule of the subnet decide whatever they want in there, right? And when they want to extract money from it, you can query the validator of the subnet to know if it's okay, right? And if it's okay, you can. And if there is a bug in the subnet and it starts to allow like all the money to flow back, like at some point there is no money in the pool anymore, so you cannot extract money from the subnet. So you're never gonna get more
separate system.
And so you have a separate system, and the rule of that separate system can be completely different.
And that way we could also try out new systems, right? Like
you can try out new stuff. You don't even need the permission.
Like
anyone can build one. Like it's not, there's no constraint.
We could build a Mitra subnet to try out a new transaction format or something. Anything like that. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And maybe it makes sense to have like a testnet, but not quite subchain, right? It uses the base token, but it's like, okay, we try new stuff, and then like it has the same transaction structure and everything, only like a new something, and then that makes sense, because doing things on the testnet is always like you have a worthless token, right? Like you can't really test it because like the economics of a worthless token are very, very different from a token that actually has.
Sure, you can test the tech at least.
Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. So maybe we can talk about this other thing in Avalanche. So I think maybe let's start with why do we have to have staking for Avalanche? Why can't we use something else, like something like proof of work? Or one thing I heard that you can only vote with Coinbases or something. Why go with the current system?
So you need to have Sybil resistance, right? That's the problem. So Avalanche is a different consensus mechanism than Nakamoto consensus. And this is why all those discussions are on proof of work and staking and whatnot around Avalanche, they get like fairly complicated because people come with them with assumption that it works like Nakamoto consensus. So Nakamoto consensus, you build a chain, and whatever chain has the most weight is the one that's going to be considered valid by everybody, right? And that weight can be the proof of work, can be proof of stake, can be proof of anything. People have done like proof of hardware space and proof of network bandwidth, and they have done Nakamoto chain with proof of like anything you can imagine. But yeah, so that proof of whatever is not just a Sybil resistant mechanism. It's also what is used to measure the weight of the chain, right? And it's not the case for Avalanche, right? Avalanche has its own consensus algorithm that doesn't depend on those weights. Actually, if you read the Avalanche paper, they don't talk about proof of anything whatsoever at any point in time. They assume that you select your set of validator in some way, and then they can come to a consensus, right? And they don't describe how you're gonna choose those validator or whatnot, because it's completely irrelevant for the paper. How you choose them doesn't change how the protocol works. But the problem is that you still need a proof of something for Sybil resistance. Otherwise, someone can run like 1 million node, 10 million node, like, and effectively, like everybody is querying that person for that, and so that person effectively controls the network, right? So this is this scenario you want to avoid. You want to know that the validators are real real thing, not like the same thing presented to you in the bazillion different way, like, house of mirrors. And for that, you need to tie those validators to a resource that is scarce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's do proof of identity.
You could do that, and this is what banks are doing effectively, right? You have a banking license, and that allows you to connect yourself to Swift or other banking networks and participate in it, right? So it is what it is effectively, right? But you want the thing to be permissionless. So you want to attach a scarce resource to the validator so that, there cannot be a bazillion validator that are spawned out of thin air. And it turns out that there is a scarce token on the chain. And so,
that's the token.
That's, yeah, exactly. So that's the way to do it, right? But it's not proof of stake. It's not proof of stake like Ethereum is trying to deploy proof of stake, right? It's different because the consensus algorithm works completely differently.
And why not go for, say, whoever mined the last 1,000 blocks can vote or something?
Yeah, so there are a few problems with that. Notably that you make selfish mining and stuff like that even worse.
Well, at some point you can kick out, like the argument I heard is that like it incentivizes someone to just mine 1,000 blocks and then just vote out everybody forever.
Yeah, so you have problem with new entrants, like you effectively make mining permissioned.
Yeah.
Right, because the existing miner can reject any new miner. Like there are several problems that arise when you do that with pure proof of work. And
do you think doing it
in many ways the tokens are
permissioned?
No, because you need to find the block. You cannot decide to find the block unless unless the miner decide to stake, and nobody else decide to, right? But otherwise the set of participants are going to be different. And like if you're a new miner, you're a new entrant, you want to mine the chain and the existing miner are playing stupid games, you can still get a stake in the system before you find blocks and, start voting for your own blocks. So they won't be rejected by the system. So at the end of the day, it breaks this problem of permissionless. If you were to do it with proof of work, you would actually make mining permissioned.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Also, like think about the precursor of Bitcoin. That was Arpo from Alfine, right? And I like the way he thinks about the tokens that are on the chain in Arpo. It's like respondable proof of work. Like, so the token is an amount of proof of work that has been done at some time. Not the miner, they can keep it and participate, or they can, send it to someone else. And then that someone else is effectively the detentor of the token that represent the proof of work that was made in the past, right? So in many ways, like transferable proof of work, if you want.
Yeah. And it's like this really interesting, like if you can actually trace back all the history of the innovations of Bitcoin, like we know what happened. Like the first thing was we had spam prevention, right? Like combating junk mail, pricing by computation. Like that's I think the first paper we saw. And then it became more and more about preventing spam with Hashcash from Adam Back.
Yeah, this one is very interesting. Like it's both incredibly smart and incredibly dumb. And
which means it's incredibly smart. Like that's like a brilliant idea.
Yeah, it's such an attractive idea. Like I would love that everybody used that, right? And if everybody was using it, then we wouldn't have a spam problem. That would be very wonderful. But at the same time, are you gonna convince people to use it because you're like, hey, I have this technology, it prevents spam. It's also gonna make mail more expensive, right? And nobody was asking for expensive mail to begin with, and so, there is an insurmountable economic obstacle to adoption. But if everybody was using them, like if that was introduced in the email protocol from day one, everybody would still be using it today, and nobody would receive your mail if you were not using it. So you would be stuck with it, and we would have no spam problem.
Mm.
So, but
well, let's see if Stamp can solve that, because the difference with Stamp is that you still have that quote unquote proof of work, but the proof of work is reusable. So the recipient, they can take off the stamp from the envelope and then like put it on the next envelope. and that way you actually don't like, you do solve the spam problem, because like people you don't know, they will have to pay the full price, and like there's no way for them around that. But people who you do know and correspond to back and forth, like they basically don't have to pay anything, or at least it will average out, because like you send the money back and forth basically all the time. And I like, it'll be
probably
interesting
also want to have a way to not attach money for like validated contact or something.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That.
Yeah, and it makes sense, because like at the end of the day, you can run your own infra, so you can just remove, like you can just whitelist certain contacts. You can be, okay, if this public key sent this, like they can completely spam my entire hard disk, like up until failure. Like I don't care. But like
but look,
for just
all
a
the
random
people
public
you
key,
have on I don't know, like Signal or WhatsApp or whatever, they can all do that effectively.
Yeah. Right. I mean, well, there might be a limit, because at the end of the day, they're like Signal is a centralized infrastructure. So like if you and I were to be like, okay, let's take down Signal, we just send back and forth messages all the time between
they probably would throttle us at some point.
Yeah, exactly. Like there will be a like, oh, delivery failed, and or like, oh, you're on a timeout or whatever. And it makes total sense, because like why, like this would be a stupidly simple like point of attack to DOS, right? Like just send messages like between two trusted people, and and they just don't block each other. Yeah. Where were we before? Yeah, with the staking. Yeah, because like we also want to at some point activate Avalanche on Lotus, because one problem is that right now we don't have a lot of proof of work, and there's a lot of GPU miners, and we don't have ASICs yet, so it's quite easy. Like it would probably be quite easy to attack. We still have the rolling checkpoints, so that makes it like you have a certain point where like you can.
I think one of the first thing that's gonna go once Avalanche is activated is the rolling checkpoint, I guess.
Oh yeah, you'll just remove that feature.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Why? Like, is there reason to like? Is there any downside to like still having it?
The problem with the rolling checkpoint is that it trades security against the most common attacks.
Well, first of all,
with
maybe explain
even more
what the
catastrophic results.
Maybe
so the rolling checkpoint is effectively the node is going to refuse to reorg past a certain depth. There are a few parameters that make it slightly more complicated than that, but that's basically the idea. And the idea is like, well, if someone comes up with a chain out of nowhere that is like hundreds of block long, it's probably an attack. Like, what is the probability that this is legit? It's very small. So, so that's the idea, right? And the problem with that is that it's gonna protect the chain against some simple attack, but it creates more difficult to conduct attack with specific timings and stuff like that. But that would have much more catastrophic effect, right? Because it would split the chain in a way that it cannot recover from.
Yes, because everybody's stuck on their respective chain.
Yeah, and they won't reorg in the other one.
You have to manually invalidate block or something. Yeah.
So you are trading safety against some attacks by making other type of attacks more catastrophic. But those other type of attacks are harder to execute and all of that, right? So this is a worthy trade-off if you have nothing better. But if you have Avalanche, there is no reason to.
So you reintroduce very long reorgs, but you have to go through Avalanche in order to do that. Right.
Yeah, you're gonna have to find blocks, and then you're gonna have to vote on them. Everybody's gonna vote no on those blocks because they are reorgs, right? So
well, or maybe they don't, because like maybe the majority realized, wait, is like, because we like,
so
maybe we can talk a
let's
little
take
bit
a
about that.
concrete
Yeah.
example, right?
Mhm.
Because we can talk about weird attack in the abstract, but it's difficult for people to figure that out. But let's
Because
say
we got an actual example where Avalanche was used to do a big reorg, no?
yes and no, but let's take a very
sure.
simple example. So let's say Australia is cut off from the rest of the internet for some time, for whatever reason. There is a boat that bring all the cables and break them, or like whatever reason, Australia for some time gets isolated from the rest of the internet. And like obviously it's quite a big problem. People fix it very quickly. Maybe like few hours or few days later, they reconnect to the internet with everybody. But what do you know? The chain on both sides have diverged. With a rolling checkpoint, you have two currency now, right? Because the node are gonna consider each other chain completely invalid, right? If you have something like Avalanche, well, each chain is gonna continue and the block are gonna finalize on both sides, but only with the validator on each side, right? Like at some point, it's gonna appear that all those validators have disappeared from each side, right? And at some point, all those validators reappears, and suddenly they have a new opinion. And so it's gonna take you're gonna have to mine a couple of blocks, because before you mine blocks, there is no opportunity to have something to decide on, right? But as you find new blocks, people are gonna run Avalanche on those new blocks, and they're gonna be like, okay, actually, it's a deep reorg, but I'm on the wrong side of it. Let me get back to where everybody is.
And then it turns out the majority of the proof of work and stake is in Australia, and the whole world gets their chain reorg because of the Aussies.
Maybe, who knows, right? But that's actually a drawback of Avalanche. Like Avalanche by itself cannot do that. Nakamoto consensus is very adamant to doing that, right? That's one of the reasons to use both. If you have some piece of the network that find itself isolated for whatever reason, network problem or whatever, big firewall of China, I don't know, right? Those nodes are going to fall back into consensus. They would not on a purely Avalanche system, for instance.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, because you have to build the proof of work on top of that. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about the attack that happened on eCash initially? Do you have some?
Yeah.
So
some
knowledge there that might be spicy.
When the fork happened, some people mined the chain at a loss with only empty blocks, effectively, in the hope of killing it. And so we decided. So we have a prototype of Avalanche that is working for quite some time, and so we put it in place. We explained to various network participants how to run Avalanche with the experimental parameters. And they started rejecting the block of the attackers, and that was the end of it, right? Well, eventually the new chain caught up, and the attackers stopped attacking the network.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Very simple to say that way, but they lost a fair amount of money mining in the wind.
Yeah, because it took a long while to discover that. Because like, how do you even know, right? Like, it's very difficult to know if like you've been like if people fix that problem, right? Like, you would assume like, oh, I just continue mining on my chain, and at some point they'll like reorg. But yeah.
Well, yeah. Plus, they were mining with a fair amount of hash power, more than it was profitable to mine the chain, right? So effectively, their chain was, fairly advanced. Versus the chain that used Avalanche. So it took some time to catch it up, right? They had to give up, for it to catch it up. But they were seeing that they were growing that chain longer and longer and longer, spending all that money, but none of the infrastructure was adopting it, because it figured out that it was in a different branch, and that everybody was on the other branch. So
yeah, and then they were losing a ton of eCash. But they were smart. They started a campaign where like you could sell your eCash to them for a Bitcoin Cash. So then they had their eCash back. So at the end, everybody was happy, and they luckily got rid of their their BCH that they probably, yeah, like it seemed they spent that on mining and buying eCash, which
Well, I have the impression, though I cannot know for sure, but I had the impression that many of the people that were backing the BCH fork that happened at the time were actually short BCH, not long. I'm fairly confident that many of them were.
Okay, why? Like, oh, because
well,
of
many
the...
of them disappeared shortly after the fork, and the fact the result would be catastrophic was pretty self-evident.
Oh, yeah, it's basically like if people are causing a lot of trouble, then the trouble.
Yeah, they're like, oh,
occurs.
there is a narrative that idiots in the community can believe, and there are enough idiots in that community for it to work. So we're gonna tow their narrative, knowing it's gonna have a catastrophic effect on the future of the chain, and you know, on the side we're shorting it. Obviously, it seems like there are some prominent figure that were believing, you know, like spending their own fart, we say.
Interesting. And then it makes sense that you would
but I'm
buy
pretty sure that all
eCash
the one
or
who disappeared, all the one who disappeared, maybe not all, but many of the one who disappeared were probably short BCH when saving it.
That's an interesting hypothesis. Yeah, like, and you know, like, you know, there's been a recent video by Lauren Southern about like the new right, and it kind of opened my eyes, like how naive many people are. And I probably would have been very, like, I probably have been very naive at the start of BCH. You know, like it's just very hard to detect bad actors in the space. And you know, like some people were calling them out, and were like, and you were you were one of them, obviously. Like you were very, and that's why you got very like a lot of heat, obviously, because like if you call someone out who has a very high incentive to not be called out, then like one thing they can do is just to redirect the energy to you and just be like, oh no, actually Avalanche, not Avalanche, Amaury, basically the same thing. Amaury created, he's actually the source of all of our problems. Therefore, we just have to get rid of him. And yeah, but
no problem are gonna be solved.
Yeah, but how do you think we could prevent bad actors from joining eCash? Like how, like,
you cannot really prevent bad actor from joining, right? Especially since it's permissionless system. But you don't have to bring them in position of prominence, right? Which was the case in BCH since day one. And this is something I've pretty much since day one also I've been discussing with various leaders in the BCH space. It was like, hey, you know, you're promoting that guy, is probably not such a good idea. You're promoting that guy, is probably not such a good idea, right? But you know, there was this idea that effectively, you know, like anyone that is enthusiastic about it must be a good person, and here is what that leads to. Right? Like you need to be. It just creates people pretty selective about who you.
It just creates hype men. You basically incentivize just hype men. Just be like, okay,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
I'm the most enthusiastic of all of them. Please, everybody, follow my lead. Yeah,
exactly. And this is something that BTC has been very good at. So you know, like you were like BTC made bad trade-off. I don't think they made only bad trade-off. I think a lot of the trade-off that they made are underestimated by the space.
And I actually felt that I was in Mallorca on the blockchain days. I think they previously were called Bitcoin days, but then, you know, they kind of wanted to branch out because there were a lot of like maxis there, and you know, I can get along with maxis there as long as they're like respect me. If I respect them, then that's fine. And you know, they had very interesting projects. Like they had a fully offline Lightning ATM, which I think is really cool, right? Like you just you like the phone obviously is not offline, but you can basically buy crypto without having without the machine having any internet access. And I think that's very good for like places like, you know, El Salvador or places like that, where or Argentina, right? Argentina actually uses Bitcoin because the alternative is just too difficult.
Yeah, they have some good stuff, and they have some very strong guarantee that are within their culture, so they are unlikely to change, right? Like the fact that they don't do hard fork is it's a blessing and a curse, right? But it's also a blessing because that means that there is no room for people to break everything. There is no room for people to fix anything, but there is no room for people to break anything, right? And that means that if I buy Bitcoin today, I put them on a paper wallet or something, I can go back to them in 20 years. And I know what I have on those paper wallets, right? I know the characteristics of the coins that are on those paper wallets. There would be no surprise, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think I can say that of any other token in the space except the one that are dead.
Yeah, they're not going to change either. Yeah, and probably the polar opposite of that would be Ethereum, or
Ethereum is the opposite of that. Yes.
Yeah, and therefore it kind of makes sense that those are the two biggest ones, right? They're like they're like the and I think we talked about that previously. They're like the Republicans and Democrats, right? It's like, okay, like let's.
You didn't discuss that with me, but yeah. Like more the conservative and
I think we did that on the Popular Liberty podcast, right? Like with the religion and everything. And there we like made sure that, okay, democracy basically ensures that like you have these total polar opposites. And, you know,
apparently there are even genetic factors that can predict on what side you're going to fall with high degree of accuracy. It's frightening in a way.
What do you mean? I didn't follow.
If you're going to be like a progressist or a conservative, effectively, like that can be predicted genetically with
genetics. That's crazy.
Accuracy. Yeah. And after that can also be predicted by personality trait that don't evolve that much. Like some personality trait, they're gonna change depending on the experience you have in your life and stuff like that. Some of them, they stay very constant. And this is predicated on traits that are very constant.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Let's not go too much into genetics because
but this is kind of frightening, right? Because it means that this madness that we see in the political world is like it's built into humans, effectively, right? And so in some way
it makes sense
kind of has to play out.
Like, for example, there are a certain kind of people who are like night owls, and we've proven that scientifically. So night owls are people who like stay up way too long, right? They're like they go to sleep at like 2 a.m. I think I am one too, but I can sometimes manage. And then there's people who are like early birds, and they just like they really thrive in the morning.
You can know, actually, it depends on your circadian cycle. And the circadian cycle is what regulates, your body along the day to change your metabolism depending on, like, do you need to be energetic? Do you need to go to sleep and whatnot? And actually for human, it's kind of screwed up because I think the average circadian cycle for humans is 25 hours or something like that. It's slightly longer than a day. So it's why the majority of people have a bit of a problem waking up in the morning. They need an alarm clock and stuff like that. But for most people, it's like slightly more than 24 hours, but not by much, right? But for people for which it's going to be shorter than 24 hours, those are going to be the people that wake up, at 6 a.m. To do sport before going to work. But then, if you go out on the evening with them, they are completely sleepy very quickly, right? And on the other hand, you have people that have a well longer circadian cycle that are not just like most people. They don't really like to wake up, but it's okay. But if you have a circadian cycle that is like 28 hours or so, or more, then it's when you get into like insomnia territory and you cannot wake up in the morning. It's very difficult and all of that. But it's what's studied, and it's not a big mystery anymore, and you can measure it quite precisely.
Yeah, and but what I wanted to say with that is that there's there's these different kinds of people, and it makes sense genetically that you have almost in your genes like almost like a random generator of different offspring that has different kinds of cycles, because then they can like watch the
this is the whole reason for sex. I mean, but like,
Yeah.
it was like
No,
a joke, but
what I
it's
mean,
not like,
what I mean that
like,
there's probably a genetic selection for that to be random, if that makes sense.
yeah, if you have too much of the people of one kind, it probably doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you need different kind of people that complete each other, that complement each other. Yeah. But it's the whole like, it's what sex is for. Like, you know, primitive beings, they just like split in half. Like bacteria, for instance, is split in two bacteria, and voila, you have two bacteria, and those are the same than the original one, right? But at some point, you created like this crazy complicated, and it's not just human, like all animals, they have like crazy process to find a mate, and you know, try to seduce each other and whatever, right? And humans, like, we build expensive car and sells like billions of dollars worth of makeups and whatever, right? Like we have nightclubs and what, there is like billions of dollars spent, not even every year, like every weeks, just around
but there's a reason,
mating.
because at the end, that's the one reason, right? Like,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
ultimate reason. There's nothing
yeah.
that could be more important, kind of, right?
But there is a huge amount of resources that's being poured into that. And when you think about it from an evolutionary perspective, that's resources that is not being spent into like finding food, defending yourself against predators and whatever else, right? So so that wouldn't make sense, except the benefit you get out of it is that every single individual is unique, because every single individual is a mix of their parent who are themselves unique, except, you know, true twins, I guess, but that's that's fringe instance, right? Like most people are fairly unique. And well, because of that, you know, you can have the plague and almost everybody dies, but there are still like people, they get the plague and they survive, and then they cannot get it anymore, their immune system is done, right? And so pretty much what happens, there are some people that make it of it and are there to carry the torch. And there is no reason for it to be different for psychological traits or inclination.
Yeah, like some people are very resistant because, you know, there's like, you know, like bacteria and so forth, which are like physical viruses, and then there's you know, like ideas that are very bad for you, and they can spread, right? Like we probably shouldn't mention too many before we get canceled, but there's a few out there that we probably would agree on that are very, very harmful to you if you have them and you are spreading them.
Yeah, well, that's, I think, you know, the whole culture and religion and all of that is a way for human to supercharge evolution. Right?
Because memes can evolve very, very quickly.
Yeah, we have genes,
anybody who looked at memes is like, these evolve way too quickly.
Yeah.
They have like a life cycle of a week at most.
Yeah, you have genes, but you know, changing genes require generations. So what do you do, you know, when humans invent more and more stuff and you evolve more and more quickly? Well, nature came up with a technology for humans so that they can evolve faster. They have ideas and they can share them, right? And they are somewhat hereditary, somewhat contagious, and some of them are good for you, some of them are bad for you. Actually, there is a great saying that says that, you know, IDs have, like, people don't have IDs, IDs have people. and it's very true. So
it's certainly true for us. Like, you know, eCash has us, kind of, right? At least Bitcoin has us. Right? Like I would continue working on something like that, even, you know. And that kind of proves that no, I'm stuck with this. But yeah, and that also shows us, like, first of all, why there's toxicity between chains, because like this is not, these clearly are not just technological technological things, right? Like the Bitcoin is not just a technological project. It's mostly a social project, right? Like it's mostly which is why you know, Cyprian has been saying that eCash is one of the few Bitcoin chains other than BTC who is like, okay, there are bad ideas which we shouldn't do, and I think we we saw that a little bit on Bitcoin Cash. That was like, oh no, whenever you have an idea, like that's good, right? Like you have a new idea, wow, you're supportive of the chain. Let's try that out and so forth. And we saw that with the ultimate conclusion of that was like this like explosion of nodes, which were just funded like to ridiculous amounts. Where it's like, okay, everybody needs their own node, and like, yeah, and that's an idea that it will probably select itself out of the
yeah, but that's the thing, like ideas evolve, new idea created, idea dies because nobody believes in them anymore, so they have like the same characteristics as like anything that is subject to natural selection. And also I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of selfish gene.
Selfless gene, selfish gene, yeah, of course.
Selfish gene. So a selfish gene is like a gene that is good for the gene but not good for the individual, and actually evolution select for selfish gene. And it's the same for ID. Like if an ID is very good at spreading but make the people that believe in the ID miserable, then it's going to be very successful anyway, right? Because evolution select fitness to spread effectively, right?
Yeah, not success itself. Yeah, not, which there's a difference.
I mean, success. Yeah. How do you define success? Evolution has its own definition of success that may not be yours.
Yeah. And now with Bitcoin, we have this very, like, Ralph Merkle, like the guy who invented hashes and Merkle trees and everything. He said that Bitcoin is the first biological life, and we can really see that. And maybe memes were the first, but they always needed like a host. With Bitcoin, we can now see something that is quite external. It probably is tied very much into memes. But so what do you think about it? Do you think that Bitcoin is a new form of life, or do you think that's like stretching it a little?
Well, we don't have a definition of life, so that's that's very difficult to answer, right? Like it's kind of, we have an intuitive understanding, but we don't really have a proper definition. If you define it as something that is able to capture energy from its surrounding to reduce its entropy, then I'm not sure that Bitcoin fits that definition. Like as far as I can tell, this is the best definition.
Well, what about leading zeros? Isn't that like reducing entropy? Anyway, let's skip that part. But yeah,
it's not a given. What is reducing entropy definitively is coming, like having the nodes come to a consensus. But to begin with, like Bitcoin, it generated that entropy that it's then destroying to begin, like, because without Bitcoins, there is no nodes that get out of consensus, right? So it's not like
yeah, that makes sense.
It's not like there is a pre-existing entropy to get rid of.
Yeah, but then it totally reduces entropy. Like it reduces the entropy between the different nodes, which you could
use. It uses entropy that it creates. So I don't know that it counts.
Well, but like there's still the law of conservation of energy. Like I can only reduce my local entropy by creating energy, like by creating energy outside. Like I can only reduce.
No, you cannot create energy. You can.
But it's the same.
You can reduce your entropy by using energy from the outside. Like you need.
Yeah, exactly, and that's exactly what Bitcoin does. No, like it reduces its own entropy between nodes, right? Like every node gets in sync with each other and finds leading zeros.
Yeah, but you're made of raw materials that existed before you.
And the same with hash power, no? Like, what do you
mean? The hash and like anything in Bitcoin did not exist. Like we made it all up. So I don't know that it qualifies, but
it's an interesting.
That's one definition of life, right? That there might be others. Who knows?
Yeah, reducing its own entropy by using an external resource, and I think that would apply to Bitcoin. And right now, Bitcoin, I view Bitcoin as a domesticated life form by humans, but domestication always goes in two directions, right? Like dogs and cats also to some extent, especially cats, I guess, domesticate us, right? Like we adapt to them.
Cats domesticated themselves.
Yeah.
There was like it's well documented. We domesticated dogs, but cats they did themselves. They're
So
like,
they're
oh,
the
those
top of the
human
food chain.
peoples, they have food. That's good. That's no, but it came to be because human had grain, and grains attract, like rats
Mice.
and rodents, in general, mice and all of that. And so the cats were interested by the rodents, so they came to see humans. And eventually, like the cute one, the humans, they kept with them, and the not cute one, the humans, they chase them away, right? So the cats, they learn to be like cute to humans, so that humans would be happy to have them around, so that they could eat the mice and stuff. Like for the longest time, cats were around humans, but humans were not feeding them or whatever. Like this is relatively recent. But in agrarian society, people had cats, but the cats were just like eating the grain and stuff like that, and people were happy to have them because they could keep the grain, and the cats doesn't care about the grain.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually similar with chickens, right? Like chickens, they eat the bugs, right? Like then you get a nice, like you get basically fertilizer, right, in exchange. And with dogs it's maybe a little different because they're like protecting against predators. And yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how similar mechanisms will emerge on Bitcoin, right? Like, will there be some kind of like domestication? Like maybe there will be, like to some extent, I would say
we are
that
domesticated though. Like people are building mining companies and stuff like that. Like nobody told them to, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Did you tell anyone to start a mining company? Like not even Satoshi did that. She's like, okay, I'm created that thing and I'm gonna mine, and a bunch of people started to mine as well. Nobody told them to. The economics incentive did that. So
yeah,
it's more like the system of pheromones for ants, more than it is a form of life, I'd say.
Yeah, could I mean, on the
like
other hand,
pheromones for humans,
there's an argument to be made that the the whole ant colony is almost more of its own life form, only that they have like the cells spread out all over the place, right? Because it can make decisions, it can do certain things because of that colony mechanism. I mean,
yeah, some people subscribe to that. I don't know if that's
and to some extent you could say that like civilizations are like higher order life forms of the same kind, like for humans, right? Like you have, for example, the Roman Empire. You could say, okay, that's like you can draw it on the map, right? You can be, okay, this is where the Roman Empire is, and like it defends its territory, which is like defined by land, but it uses like humans, and at the end of the day, it's all just in our head. But that's basically so that's that I think is where a meme is actually an actually kind of life form. I mean, it's really stretches the definition of life, but
it really I don't know, but I like the comparison with human pheromones.
yeah
I think it's
makes sense.
less stretching things.
Yeah, I think we're kind of like reaching an endpoint here.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the conference. What do you like? What would you like to see? Like, what did you like in past conferences, and what do you think would be great to have?
I mean, I think the biggest value of that conference is going to be meeting people face to face, especially since the past year with COVID and stuff like that, it's been difficult for most people to travel, and there is really an interaction that happen face to face that doesn't happen like in video chat or whatnot, right? Like there is a part of it that is missing, just like going to have a beer with friends and stuff like that. Like you cannot really replace that through a computer.
And most of us just communicate through like we actually don't talk a lot through video chat, like the two of us, and the same with like most other crypto people. We just talk through like Twitter mostly and Telegram, and it's like you lose so much
Yeah,
information.
and you know, it's gonna get people to know each other.
Mm.
It's gonna get people excited to meet new people. I know that I'm gonna get excited to meet new people, you know, and you know, like just being around like-minded people and having some fun and discovering new ideas as well, like because the people that are in that space are usually pretty interesting. So yeah, that's the deal. I think that's worth it, you know.
Mm.
If you have not done any of those conferences before, give it a shot. That's worth it.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. So
Yeah, I'm saying, you know, like one mistake that I did in the past, you know, it was like, oh, there is a conference, whatever, I'm gonna watch the talk online later on and stuff like that. And you know, they're gonna be very interesting talk and you can see them after the fact, but most of the value when you go to conference is actually meeting the people, right? And
yes.
the talk, they act as conversation starter, they allow to exchange ID, they put everybody in the right mindset and whatnot. They are an interesting part of it, but the most interesting part of it is getting to meet the people in person.
Yeah, and that's for me right now, that's the most important part. It's about, okay, where can I see them, where can I get them, like what kind of people will be there. And the talks are more like conversation starters, as you said. And it's like, okay, can we get like some base work, and also like for people to like present their stuff in like a interesting way, and also like many things you can only really experience hands-on, right? Like especially like how do you explain someone how a wallet works? Like you can do it online, but if you have like if you can like, okay, now you scan the QR code and so forth, like the interaction is just way different. And I think and you see that a ton on like when I went to LibertyCon and there was like a crypto section, like was like I mean I explained people how to use the Zcash wallet. I mean I didn't know how to, but they're all the same basically. So like, you know, you will learn a ton by just like talking to the people there and just like asking a question like, how do I like,
yeah,
how do I
and
do
you
that?
don't know what you will learn, but you know that you will learn something.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
at least I know.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. And that's, you know, when I like was looking at the different kind of speakers that I that was trying to get, I tried to get like different areas, right? I didn't want it to be just like I didn't want it to be just crypto and not just like eCash and so forth. I wanted to be a different area. So that's why I got like, you know, someone like, I don't know, a note from Noteworthy, Kevin, because he's doing like physical paper notes, and you know that's also crypto, but it's like a very different angle to approach the cash perspective, and you know there'll be lots of things to learn there, and also like you know, Torsten Polite, who has been warning about CBDCs for a while, but who also sees the value in Bitcoin and so forth, but who also sees the problems with Bitcoin, like the scalability and so forth. So yeah,
man, the CBDC, you know, I've been talking about stuff like that for years, but I have to say it's coming way faster than even I anticipated. When I look at, you know, if I look at myself 10 years ago, I was seeing this coming, but at the time I thought that right now we would be much less further along than we actually are, right? So yeah, those people, you get to listen to those people.
Yeah,
you have to, right? Like one thing that we've learned over the past 2-3 years is that most people that have, you know, check mark next to their name or, you know, diploma on their wall or whatever, it did not mean that much, right? Some of them are smart and competent and some of them aren't. And we need to revert back, you know, what is the track record of the people I am listening to? Like, what did they say in 2008, for instance, before the big crisis that happened there? Like, were they able to predict it? Maybe not all the details, but have a good sense of what's likely to happen or not, right? What did they say during the pandemics with COVID-19? What did they say, you know, when Trump was elected or whatnot, or Brexit happened, you know, all those things. And nobody's gonna get everything right. Like you must not be whole, holier than Christ kind of person, but some people are gonna have a decent track record and some people are not, right? Some people are gonna get a few things wrong and some people are gonna get everything wrong. It's something we need to learn how to do, right? Because we live in an information where we live in a world where there is too much information, not enough. So we need to find the right sources. The people that are gonna do good are the people we know, or to look at those track record and find the interesting people.
Yeah, I think that's I think one skill that I really had to learn, that like you really don't get taught in school. In school, you basically get like proof of authority, which we now see does not work. But what we now have to learn is, okay, how...
Also, but it cannot work, because think about it. The people who are really good understanding money and economics and stuff like that are almost never going to be teachers, because they almost always are going to have better economic opportunities, right? Because they know about economics. So it's bound, unless, this is their true passion and calling. And some people are like that, right? But the vast majority of the education you're going to get in economics through a traditional education system is bound to be really bad. Right? It's
which is why we see this like whole coaching scene emerge, which is like this like very small group of people who are coached by one person who is very knowledgeable, and they just pay a very high price because they know I get exclusive access to someone who got things right a lot. And there's going to be trade-offs there, but
yeah. And one thing that is interesting, so it has been true for economics for a very long time, but what is happening, like if you look at most education system, at least in the West, you see the grades or the capability of the students in STEM field to be cratering, over the past decades or so, right? Like math, science, physics, like whatever, all of that, it's all cratering. Why is that? Because the people that are skilled in there now have opportunity where they can literally make 5 times more than a teacher, sometimes 10 times more, right? If you're a good mathematician, you can work in finance, predicting models, and make like as much as 10 teachers. If you are good in physics, you can work in the car industry, you can work in rockets or whatever, building robots. Like there is so many stuff that you can do that are so much more valuable, at least in terms of income. And so you cannot find teacher for those things, and it's more and more the case. So school is not going to help you on that. Literally, the 2 things that matter to understand Bitcoin, school cannot help you pretty much, like structurally. It's impossible to find the right people because they have, at least in sufficient quantity, because they have so much more opportunities.
Yeah. And the real education, I guess, is what we've done today, like just cover different topics. And like these kinds of conversations, you'll get, like I had those at all the conferences, right? Like the entire time, right? Like talking about philosophy, talking about technical stuff, talking about like business, talking about all of these different kinds of things. And you really don't get, like, you might get them on YouTube, but I think there's a certain danger there that, like, you get people who are incentivized to just talk about that.
So there is really good content on YouTube. The problem is the content that gets the most view and the content you're gonna get like promoted through the search engine and stuff like that is not the most valuable, because it's the most attention seeking.
Time.
Yeah, it's the one that is better at grabbing attention, not at delivering the most information. So if you know some creator that make really solid content, go watch those, and there are a ton of those on YouTube, but you need to dig them, because they are not going to be the one that appears naturally in your recommendation for the most part.
So go hit that subscribe button to get more content like this. Ring the bell,
and don't forget the bell,
and leave a comment down below. And click all the things in the description, especially the one where you buy the ticket for the electronic cash conference. Yeah.
Exactly. And something I noticed, I'm watching more and more content in French on YouTube. And I don't know if this is the case for you with content in German, but I'm watching more and more content in French. Whereas before I was watching much more content in English. And well, the reason is there's generally more content in English than there is in French, right? So on the balance of probabilities, the good content is usually in English more than in French, not always, but most of the time it is, because there's so much more of it. The problem is that most of the content in English is so optimized to work well with the algorithm and to grab your attention and all of that, that I find it less informative. And at least the French scene is much less optimized on that front, because I guess the audience is smaller and the space is a bit younger. Probably in a few years it's going to be the same garbage, but but right now I find myself reading to more and more content in French because of that.
I mean, maybe I'll need to check out more German content, because there is a lot German content there, and it is not as optimized. I mean, other than like the very clickbaity stuff, but like I see a lot of very polished English programming content, which is just for entertainment. It's just about attention grabbing, and you don't really learn a lot from there, at least compared to other things. And
yeah, you learn one trick here and there, but being a good craftsman, whatever the craft, be it programming or something else, is not having a giant bag of tricks. I think a giant bag of tricks is part of it that you're going to get with experience, but you need to have strong fundamentals of whatever the skill is. So if you let's take a different example that's maybe more accessible. There is a ton of content on YouTube about guitars and playing guitars, right? And there are people that are like, oh, can you play the solo in that song? Or, what technique can you use to have these specific effects or whatnot, right? But then, to do the specific effect, and then what, right? Like you need to have like a well-rounded foundation for that to be a useful addition to your bag of tricks, but in itself, it's not very valuable. And that long-form foundation, you are probably not going to find it on YouTube for the most part. And it's the same for many other skills. Same for programming, as you mentioned. Like, people are going to be like, oh, how do you build like a blog with like this and that library and Node, right? But then this is all you know to do. You have learned no fundamentals that you can reuse in another project.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think this also touches a different topic, which I probably don't want to discuss too much, is how do we sort, can we find better ways to sort content other than, watch time? And we kind of wanted,
that's a big one.
We kind of trying to do that on we call it forum on Lotus, right? Like you can go to web.stamchat.io, and what you see there is content, but it's not sorted by like how many clicks it gets or whatever. It's only sorted by how much Lotus people are willing to burn for that piece of content. So that kind of makes sure that either it's something that other people are like, oh no, this is so good, I want other people to watch this, or they are, oh no, I get so much benefit from that, I want other people from other people seeing that.
You need to find the right, it's all gonna be about networks.
Yeah. And I think
it was in the past somewhat, but my impression is that it's going to be much more about your network in the future, in the coming years, even more than it was in the past.
And this is something I've been optimizing for way more now. I've been looking, okay, where can I get these high quality connections, and also within my own family, how can I create the connections there better? How can I create a good community that I can rely on, and also one that can rely on me? And I think this is something that if you don't have that in your life right now, like a solid community that relies on you and that you can also rely on, then I think there might be that might be something that you could optimize for more.
Okay.
All right,
maybe
we should
wrap it up. Yeah.
That was quite a long conversation, but very, very, wait, that was a really long conversation. Anyway,
Yeah, that was almost 3 hours.
yeah, thanks so much
2.5,
for your time.
something like that.
Yeah.
Ciao, ciao. Thank you. Thank you,
Bye bye.
Tobias.